Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Today I want to talk to you guys about this whole concept of staggering calories on different days, meaning eating more calories on the days where you lift than the days where you don't lift. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on scaling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this because this is something I've had a couple questions in the last few days, even saw something similar to this in the Q&As. A lot of people do this, and you want the truth. Quite frankly, I think it's paralysis by analysis. When you really look at it objectively, there's no benefit to doing this. No benefit to doing this. You're not going to gain less fat. You're not going to gain more muscle. It's not going to do anything for you, magical or different. You're not going to see any real difference in body composition from doing it. And I think people overthink things like this. I think they really do. People are always trying to complicate things. They're trying to look for an advantage, anything to help them out. So they want to try different things. They come up with these ideas, but when you really look at it, doesn't matter. We know that tissue weight changes just over time, no matter whether they're fat, muscle, whatever else, whether it's going up, going down. Really, your net weekly caloric intake is what matters versus your energy out. So the total calories that you expel versus what you take in is what's going to affect your weight gain the most. People way overemphasize meal timing, and even most of the experts who look at this will tell you even meal timing throughout the day doesn't matter very much until you start doing extreme things. Like if you sit down and say, I'm just going to eat one meal a day, okay, that's where you start running into problems. That's where you gain less muscle. That's where you aren't training as effectively. You're more lethargic, everything else. So, people try extreme approaches when you say meal timing doesn't matter a lot. And then when it matters, like, oh, you're wrong, it does matter. Well, only if you do something really extreme. And it's not that it matters in a positive way. It's when you do really extreme things. Oftentimes it's detrimental. It harms your progress in the long term, even harms your well-being and quality of life. Just a different way to look at that. Doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It means when you do minor variations, it doesn't matter. Oh, eating most of your calories in the morning versus the evening, whatever. It might affect your individual appetite, but it's not going to affect your body composition that much. So when we come to the whole point of staggering different days, well, people will argue, well, you grow the most within the next 24 hours after you train. You only grow at most 48 hours after you lift. So, it makes sense to stagger calories a little bit based upon if you're eating too much on days where you're not really growing much, you're not recovering, you're not burning it in the gym, you're going to gain more fat, right? Well, not necessarily, because you are in a recovery phase after. And here's the thing. First of all, you don't absorb all of your calories the same day you eat them. That's going to come as a big shock to a lot of people. They're going to be like, what? It can take up to 48 hours and in some rare cases 72 hours to fully digest and absorb all the calories you eat from a big meal. Okay, depending on the composition of it, the fiber, the fat, all of that. So you absorb most of it, the vast majority of it, the first day you eat it, usually within 8 hours. Okay, but you're still getting a trickle of it. So there's still a residual effect, and the more that you eat, the longer that pans out. So if you ate an extra 1,000 calories in one day, you're actually going to extend out the amount of time it takes to absorb all of it. Okay, so focusing on specific days, it may not be as exact as you think it is. All right, number two, okay, people say, well, I don't want to gain fat on my off days, and I'm not growing very much in those anyways. I don't need the training fuel. But here's the thing. The calories you eat impact your recovery. All right? They impact your recovery that day. So if you end up, say, trying to stagger your calories around, some people will be in a surplus, small surplus on their training days, and then eating a small caloric deficit on their off days. Well, what happens when you eat in a caloric deficit? You don't get quite as much recovery. If you're pushing yourself pretty hard, that can be a problem. If you're on a fairly mild program, probably not a big deal. If you're on a fairly intense program, something like my Novice 5x5, here's a perfect example. That's a pretty intense program. A lot of workload, even for the 3 days a week you're doing, it's a lot of workload. You're recovering heavily on that next day. Your calories, your carbs, your protein, they impact your recovery. Right? I think we all grasp that. They impact your recovery. Also, there's the training performance. A lot of people have noted that carb loading the evening before a heavy, intense training session the next day, most of the experts have noted, it usually produces slightly better performance. So if you undereat on the day before your training, let's say you're training 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you undereat Thursday and you have an intense session on Friday. You're going to say, well, I didn't gain any fat on the Thursday. So that was beneficial because I wasn't growing that much anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm in a calorie deficit. Well, what happens when you're in a calorie deficit? Your glycogen stores get reduced just slightly. You have slightly less energy reserve, so you don't eat as much on the Thursday. What happens on your Friday morning? Your training numbers aren't quite as good. You can't produce quite the same workload. You can't lift quite the same weight. Maybe your 8 rep max turns into your 6 rep max, which you could have done had you eaten more. So ultimately, when Friday comes around, yeah, you didn't gain any body fat on Thursday because of the lower calories. You ate at maintenance or a deficit, even a small deficit, and then you're overeating slightly on the training days. Your training performance suffers because you had to eat too much to get a full stomach either the morning before, or you eat most of it after the training, but your glycogen stores aren't as replenished as they would be had you eaten a little more carbs or whatever the night before on the Thursday. You perform less on the Friday. What happens? You stimulate less muscle growth. So if you end up eating the same net calories throughout the week, but you're loading it all onto your training days, you're eating more calories on the training days, but your performance is suffering slightly, you're not producing the same workload, so you're gaining a hair less muscle, that means more of those calories can turn into body fat. Therefore, you might end up losing any advantage from the Thursday staggering when you do the Friday. You guys see how this can lead to overthinking? Because people will do this and then I just created a scenario to where you gained less muscle and gained more fat by staggering the calories. I just created a scenario where it could happen. Is that automatically going to happen? No, but it could. And that train of logic makes just as much sense as I'm going to eat more on my training days to help with the most growth, most recovery, and then eat less on my off days so that I don't gain body fat. And some people say that's best for recomposition. Well, maybe, but the counter argument then is you also might stimulate less muscle growth as a result of it. And if you stimulate less muscle growth on the same calories, where do those calories go? They have to go somewhere. You could gain body fat. But you see the problem with thinking about it either way? We're creating a situation to where we're over analyzing daily caloric intake. We're over analyzing it. Who's right? Which scenario is right? You can't really say. So did you gain much benefit from sitting around worrying about it? And here's the other thing. When we're trying to get that exact, do most people understand your caloric intakes are just an estimate? What? Your caloric intakes are just an estimate. Most of your food doesn't have the exact calories you think it does. All right, you can weigh it on a digital scale all that you want. It's a ballpark. Meaning you can take a dry food, and if you weigh it on a digital scale and it's supposed to have, that serving is supposed to have 400 calories in it, that's plus or minus 10%. If the label says it's supposed to be 400 on the dry weight before you cook it, you don't know how much moisture got into whatever this food was, these grains, even this meat. The meat you weighed, what if the hydration level is different? Do you know that a pound of meat in the fridge can lose weight over a day or two? It can lose weight. It could lose 5% of its weight over 48 hours due to water loss. It weighs differently, but has the same fat, same protein in it. But if it weighs 5% less, it has 5% more calories than you think it does per weight if your measurement was based upon at the higher hydration. Same thing with different dry grains, depending on how much humidity, how much moisture they're exposed to. It could be off by up to 10%. So your 3,000 calories you think you're eating today could be 2,700 to 3,300, and that's really what it is. So when you start trying to micromanage 200 calories difference day to day, like, okay, my maintenance is 3,000, so I'm going to eat 3,300 on my training days and 2,700 on my off days, you still might actually have it all mixed up just because of your food choices, the measurements. Even if you weigh them all out on a scale, it's not exact because the food densities based upon humidity, water, everything else impact the weight of your foods massively. Weighing on a scale doesn't guarantee that you're within 100 calories. Okay, you could be off 200 calories on 100 calories on a 1,000 calorie meal you just weighed out. You could easily be off 100 calories even if you weighed and measured everything out perfectly. So when we start micromanaging stuff like this, it turns into paralysis by analysis. We're just getting in the ballpark with everything. And so we already know that there may not be any benefit and there could be a detriment to staggering your calories. It's really difficult to say. You also know that your calorie measurements, your carb, fat, protein, everything could be off by 10% day to day. People sit around worrying about this stuff. This is all just getting in the ballpark. I'm not saying you shouldn't track. You should have a good idea of the calories you eat. It's a good idea. It's your best control over whether you're gaining or losing weight. It's the best control that you have. Unless your activity changes and you're not tracking that accurately. But it's all ballpark, and that's what you're trying to do. And that's why a lot of even the best experts out there recommend just eyeballing food. And I'm talking guys who believe calories in, calories out. Will tell you learning to just eyeball your food gives you a good idea. Even Alan Aragon recommends that. But the reality is people overthink these things. They overthink these things, and they don't matter as much as you think they do. And sometimes your overanalysis and attempt to gain an edge might actually result in you getting a slightly less effective benefit. You might have been better off had you just eaten the same calories every day and just stayed consistent. Again, paralysis by analysis. Don't let it happen to you. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.